Well, let's look at it from the positive side, Dr. Marra. How about during peacetime? We have electricity, we have aircraft that take people on vacations, we have cars. Where is the problem coming from there?
Right. Here it's less fearful, but because we at least say when we take the plane to Chicago, the only thing we fear is a hijacking, and that's not too serious nowadays. But the thing is, we're paying a high price that as much as I've buzzed around the continent quite a bit, and as much as I love planes and air conditioning, that our civilization is this, that the more we use peacetime technology, the more vulnerable we are. You know, in the Amish community in Pennsylvania, if they hear that the Arabs are going to embargo oil, they just shrug their shoulders because they have old Bessie, the horse, in the barn, and they'll saddle up Bessie and go to church or do the gardening. But we're so dependent on technology that we're vulnerable to all kinds of things, blackouts, embargoes, and of course serious accidents. Now, I'm not really being panicky about this. I think 3 Mile Island could have been serious, thank God it wasn't, but this is the price we're paying, and this is why we're acting more and more cautious about technology.
Well, aren't you really suggesting that we're stopping the clock of progress? I mean, aren't these things really necessary, that we have electric to run our society, that we have petroleum to run our cars and our factories?
Yeah, you know, but that's a slogan. This whole thing about progress can become a very, very superficial slogan that some people think that no matter what they dream up in the lab and no matter what they dream up in the country has absolutely got to be adopted, and not simply adopted. We've got to rechange all our old concepts in order to allow progress to go through. But we ought to ask ourselves that why in the world do we want science? Why in the world do we want technology? What is all this progress for? And there's so many people who think it's progress for the sake of progress, whereas we should say it's progress for the sake of humane living. And if one of these wonderful inventions, I don't care how, it might be a digital machine to make scrambled eggs, but if one of these new inventions is such to kill the humane aspect of life, well, we ought to quietly bury the patent and maybe tell the inventor to try something else that we'll do the work ourselves. So there's a word used today in political campaigns which has become itself a slogan. It's called priorities, but the word is important. In other words, we ought to ask, what is more important in life? Is it technology or is it a good human life?
A good human life. And many people are saying, in effect, that small is better and that a less complicated society is better. But yet, how do we turn the clock back? Now, if we don't have the fuel, we can't run the society, American jobs are lost, and all these other problems. So we can't simply say, well, we don't like it, so we're going to turn our backs on it. How can we get around a problem like this?
I agree with you that if you give me any single decision, should we go ahead with solar energy, should we go ahead with this or that, I would say the decision itself has all kinds of problems, and I probably couldn't give you a quick answer. But I would first of all try to persuade you, and by you I mean the people, I mean government officials, I mean academic people. I would first of all try to persuade you that we become clear again about priorities, and I would ask you to make an active commitment that man will come first, and then when you give me your specific thing, whether we should go ahead with A or not A, we'll say we'll look at the cost, we'll look at this, we'll look at that, but we'll also look at its impact, not necessarily on the environment, but on the human person. You know, it's something like this, that I happen to live in a beautiful place, 4.5 acres in North Jersey, and unfortunately I don't have a lawn because it's all rocks and hardwood trees, but I could just imagine somebody with a beautiful 4-acre plain, and he wants to put in a lawn, but he gets mighty tired cutting it by hand with his sickle, like an old farmer, so he invents a lawn mower, and it's beautiful. So his lawn mower cuts the time by 1/10, and he has much more time with his family. But then someone comes along with something still better. He says, I've got something that you don't even have to stand behind. You just press this button and this robot cuts your lawn. And I say, well, that's for me. That's what we want. And we start pushing this, and all the stations push it. But then what would happen if I'm talking with my family, or I have some guests over in the house, and my robot decides that, because he's been computerized, that 6 p.m. is the best time to cut the lawn because it's the least shrinkage and all that, and he starts roaring up to my lawn and destroying my conversation. I simply say, look, robot, you retire. I want to live with my family. It's not worth it. It's a question of price. That's the main thing.
Okay, now we're saying science is a useful servant to man. You're saying essentially it is becoming the master of man.
Right.
Maybe you'd want to elaborate on that a little bit.
And this, unfortunately, went way back to the 16th century, that I have the greatest admiration for science. Even though I've been in philosophy 27 years, I began life as a student of engineering, and I was enormously fascinated with the possibilities of science. And the only reason I quit engineering was a stupid reason, in a sense. I couldn't stand mechanical drawing. I used to mess up my reports, and I wasn't about to do it over. But even in the 16th century, when modern science was born, there was a kind of arrogance to it, that the whole press releases in those days was, we want power, we want to be able to say a few words, and we'll have this servant here. And science, therefore, was born under a kind of arrogant assumption that nothing else is important but mastery of nature. And what happened was that they had less and less faith in the old truths. And if something is true, by the way, if something is really true about the universe, it's always true. So one of the great old truths, the central old truth of Western civilization, was a belief in a supernatural origin for man, God, and that God is the creator, that God gives us the creation to enjoy and to work out our salvation, but that it is in the realm of the spirit that our life is to be measured. Well, science came along and was polite to religion, but science acted as if religion is somewhat irrelevant. I'm speaking about the philosophers of science. The real scientists like Newton and Galileo believed in God, but the philosophers of science were much more preoccupied with, from now on, we no longer need anything. We only need our test tubes. We only need our slide rules and all that. And what has happened is that science became something like magic. Real magic tries to say agrabadaga. I don't even say it right. And they want the genie to emerge. Well, science says a chemical formula or a mathematical formula, and the motor starts.
Don't you think that then what you're saying is that science has disrupted, if not destroyed, the order of the universe?
Yeah. The way it has progressed, given the kind of, I hate to use the word arrogant because so many good people, but let's say given the pressure of the philosophers of science, given their public relations, their PR people, they want to put science as the summit of the universe. Science is our salvation. We used to think man on earth needs to be saved. He needs to be saved from himself, from hatred, from sin, and we used to think there was a spiritual remedy. Now we're finding out from these philosophers of science that all we need is more courses in chemistry, physics, and everything else, and things will take care of themselves. But I'm saying that if we keep saying only that, things aren't going to take care of themselves. The giant's going to get bigger and bigger and more arrogant, and that robot is going to ruin my evening hour with the family.